Good. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Clubhouse Picks, brought to you by Godzilla Wins. I am your host, Jack Fredericks, editor of Godzilla Wins, where you can get all of your sports picks and predictions on everything from the NBA to the UFC. Go to GodzillaWins.com right now for all your great sports analysis. Clubhouse Picks is your go-to podcast for PGA predictions, tournament previews, and salty picks for the veteran golf fan. It is a lovely Tuesday evening here in Mississippi on May 9th, and we're here to give you our picks and predictions for the AT&T Byron Nelson, 1 week away from the PGA Championship. I'm here with my co-host, as always, Nate Perry, the greatest handicapping caddy west of the Rockies. Welcome, Nate.
Thank you. Happy to be here, like always.
Happy to have you. Yeah, absolutely. And we absolutely could not do this podcast without some of our amazing sponsors, one of which is Birch Gold. Inflation has consequences, everybody. As the Fed raises interest rates to combat out of control government spending, long-term bonds have diminished in value, crippling banks. Depositors are holding their breath and investors are bailing on bank stocks. Diversification has never been more important in your portfolio. The recent surge in gold prices is directly tied to this extreme market volatility right now. This is why gold has historically been a great hedge against the stock market and against inflation. Now would be a great time to diversify into gold with the Birch Gold Group. Birch Gold makes it easy to convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in precious metals. Here's what you need to do. Text Godzilla, that's Godzilla, to 989898. That's Godzilla to 989898 to get a free info kit on gold. They'll help you convert your existing IRA or 401k that's tied to a volatile market into an IRA in physical precious metals, gold and silver. And the best part, it's tax sheltered. So here's what you do. Text Godzilla to 989898. That's 989898 to claim your free info kit on gold today. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy customers, and countless 5-star reviews, Birch Gold is who you can trust to protect your future. That's Godzilla 989898. All right, Nate, here we are.
Yes, sir.
Another edition of Clubhouse Picks and another frustrating week for two guys who just can't seem to pick a winner. Can't seem to get it right. And I think that it's important to be honest with everyone and transparent. Look, picking golf is difficult. It's not like picking in the NFL. But with that is an incredible reward if you hit one, especially a long shot, because the odds are amazing. So we're not here to complain about the fact that it's more difficult than picking a side at minus 110 or some sort of money line pick at plus 145. It's just a different game, and it's a little bit more complicated. However, I'm a guy, I've been on Wyndham Clark, who won the Wells Fargo Championship. He ran away with it, actually. I've been on Wyndham Clark for months. I've been on this podcast for months telling people Wyndham Clark is going to get one. And the tournament that he does get one, I did not talk about him at all. And the reason is because I got frustrated, I got annoyed, I got tired of him basically not delivering in winnable tournaments. In an elevated event like the Wells Fargo, I really never thought that a 60-1 odds, like a guy like Wyndham, who in that type of event, it's sort of a long shot. I really didn't think he had the opportunity. And I was furious with myself for not betting him, as I'm sure Nate was as well. We'll get to Nate in a minute. I was furious. I was pissed. I was annoyed. It was everything. This was like
you took a depression nap on the back nine.
That's right. So on 16, I'm thinking, look, I want him to win. So it's not like I'm cheering against him just because I didn't bet him. But I'm thinking, I don't know, Xander Schauffele's so good. Like he'll probably just overtake him, Wyndham will look a little shaky. And then it wasn't happening. He was, by the back nine, he turned on the Jets again, and I fell asleep until like 6 o'clock. Just because I was so upset at myself, not at Wyndham. I love that guy. I'm like the biggest Wyndham Clark fan. And Harris English, Wyndham Clark, Bo Hostler, Patton Kizzire, Davis Riley, like these are my guys. Like I've been rolling with these guys for years, just these absolute wasps out there, just going out and doing what they do well and never being able to put it together. But I've been thinking about it lately, and I think that there's something to be learned here in the Wyndham Clark personal disaster. And that is, if you do this all the time and you're as focused on this stuff as we are, then you have to trust your models and your analysis, and you just have to keep picking the guys who you know are going to put it together at some point. That's the only way to really, in my opinion, it's the only way to pick long shots. You can hit a 20-1. You can hit an 18-1. We can all hit ROM at 9-1. But if you're going to hit a 60, a 70-1 long shot, 100-1, a 45-1, which can be a long shot and a good payout at times, then you have to trust your system. Wyndham Clark told us who he was leading up until this tournament. He has 6 top 10 finishes this year, and 2022, 2023, this season. I guess.
Round,
yeah. Tied for the 24th at Mexico, tied for 29th at RBC, 6th at Corrales, 5th at Valspar, tied for 27th at the Players. That's just the last couple tournaments. The dude has not missed a cut since October. Think about that. I mean, Rory has missed cuts. The idea that someone like Wyndham Clark, who is a good golfer but not a great golfer, has not missed a cut since October of 2022, and the guy plays all the time. It's not like, Serge in his heyday when he play like 4 or 5 events, and then all of a sudden you'd be like, oh, it's like, or Brooks, right? Wyndham Clark is not, he doesn't have that luxury. He's got to play. So he hasn't missed a cut in forever. And we knew that tee to green was going to be important. We knew that approach was going to be important. We said this last week with Keith here, and we knew that putting was a nice plus. So here's what Wyndham Clark does with those 3 statistics. This is at the Wells Fargo. First in strokes gained tee to green at +3. +3. He blew everyone out of the water. First in strokes gained approach at +2.21. Fourth in strokes gained putting at +1.76. Now, he is kind of a shaky putter. Sometimes he's not horrible, but
he's always been a good putter in his career. I think that it's kind of maybe stepped back a little bit this year, but yeah,
I guess that's the way to put it. This year, he's been struggling on the greens like he hasn't before. And we've been saying if he can put that part of his game together with the approach game the way it is, then he can make a real run and win a tournament. That's exactly what he did. Now, on tour, this is after the Wells Fargo, but he's 15th in total strokes gained. 15th. He's 23rd in strokes gained approach. He's 20th in strokes gained tee to green. He's 59th in strokes gained putting, and we know that's coming. He's first in total birdies at 240. Now, total birdies is a streaky or tricky stat because the more tournaments you play, the more chances you have for birdies. But still, he's still leading all the tour in birdies. So he gave us all these signs. He showed us who he was. And we, at least me, I'm not going to speak for you, but I gave up on him on the wrong week when I should have just kept hammering him until he finally hit, because he was going to win a tournament. The problem is he'd never won before. I got frustrated with him and I threw him out. I'm not going to do that. Some of these guys who I've been on for a while, guys like Sahith, guys like Tom Hoagie, Sam Burns, we've been talking about them all year. I'm not going to give up on these guys just because I'm going to get frustrated. That's what I have for you. That felt like 10 minutes, but I had to get it in because it's just been so frustrating. How did you take the Wyndham Clark win?
It was bad. I mean, it was worse for you because I haven't talked about Wyndham as much on the show. So but just sort of forensically reconstructing it and sort of reverse engineering his win, and sort of talking about all the things that we knew guys were going to need to do well. Driver is probably the most important in the bag at Quail Hollow. Wyndham throughout his career, really up until this year, was always sort of a bomb or putter archetype, like a guy who drove the ball really, really long, and a guy that putted really well. And then this year, all of a sudden, he figured out how to hit his irons, and his putting sort of regressed a little bit, but he's still really long off the tee. And it makes so much sense in a tournament where I just targeted guys who were really good drivers of the golf ball to just whiff on Wyndham at that price, considering the guys that were on my betting card who comparatively suck and are having way shittier seasons. Like it's just inexcusable. Like the idea that I'm putting, like guys like Sam Stevens on my card at like 130 or 150 to 1 and being like, oh, Wyndham at 70 is like a no-go for me. It's just like absurd. It just feels ridiculous. Like I don't like I've gotten like more angry as the week has gone on, like just sort of like ruminating on this. Like I need the Byron Nelson to start I needed to start on like Monday so I could just focus on something else.
Yeah. And I think the elevated events, which we're going to talk about in a minute, have complicated this for handicapping, at least in my mind, because what I'm doing is when it's an elevated event, I'm not really giving anyone outside of 40 to 1 any serious attention. And I should be, because that's not how golf works. And if it's not an elevated event, I'm like hammering these long shots at 150 to 1 because nobody's playing in them anymore. And the
big thing too is like we should have treated it more like a regular event. Like Scotty and Rahm were both not in the field. They both this was like their opt-out week was last week. So it's like it didn't even have that feel of like the Phoenix Open when everyone was there or whatever. Like it didn't have that same feel. Just because both of those guys have been sort of head and shoulders above everyone else this season, and we should have just not overthought it and just gone with what we normally do, which is dumb mid-range plays. And instead we started getting scared and started creeping up towards the top of the board. And instead I bet someone like Jordan Spieth, who is terrible, just atrocious. And he's injured now, he says. But he was just awful, like on Friday, like just terrible.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And he is injured. So he says this isn't an elevated event. So it doesn't matter if he withdraws. In the elevated events now, I think we're going to start seeing guys come up with some pretty interesting injuries as a way to withdraw because they're going to get hit with a fine if they withdraw for more than one. We'll talk about that with Rory in a minute. Yeah. But yeah, so he says he's injured. Fine. I mean, who knows? He probably just wants the week off before the major. I did the same thing. I mean, I was recency bias. All of a sudden I'm talking about Emiliano Grillo. I mean, who's played okay, but I just should have stuck to someone who I knew was playing well. He's playing as like a top 20 player and you're getting top 50 odds. And
he's 31 in the world right now. I mean, he's just rocketing up the world golf rankings.
Yeah, and I'm sure his majors futures will be, I haven't looked at the next one, will be a little bit lower, but he's a nice little bet if you want to take someone like a top 5 odds for the PGA. I mean, he could 100% do that. Again, 6 top 10s in 2022, 2023. So he's really good money on those odds. So, I mean, we just whiffed on that. And a lot of our friends who do this did not. They didn't. I mean, I don't know if Keith mentioned him, but I know he had him kind of on his betting card. And Nate from We Know Fantasy had him. That was his biggest outright win of the year. And it's an impressive one. Nate does this all the time and he has the models. So shout out to him. But it was frustrating and annoying, but it just solidifies what I already knew, which is that you have to stay patient and you have to stay consistent with your analysis. And at some point, one of those will hit. You only need 1 or 2 to hit every season to really cash in a big payday. It's like NASCAR that way. Yeah. Well, shout out to Wyndham. If we could get Wyndham Clark on the show, I would weep with happiness. As one of my favorite golfers I could talk to. So we'll see. Winning with Wyndham. That's our new segment. Okay, so let's move then to another segment that we can talk about. This is the news that the PGA Tour is considering. I don't know if they have made it official, but they are considering for elevated events, making them no-cut events, kind of like LIV does. Mm-hmm. There are massive implications for this. Nate, if you could kind of walk us through maybe why they're thinking about doing this and then your thoughts, and then I'll kind of chime in. We'll move on from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole thing is, the PGA Tour sort of revamping its schedule to try and keep all of the top players on the PGA Tour, right? Like this is all they may say that it's, growing the game. It's making the tour better, blah, 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 better product on TV because we have all the elite guys playing. But at the end of the day, like it was just to try and stop the bleeding from Live. So they had the elevated events that these guys can play in. The problem is that if they like don't play in them, then they lose money basically at the end of the season on like the player incentive stuff. Like the PIP. Fund. Yeah. So the way to sort of make it less financially damaging to them, but still encourage them to come is basically by making them no cut events. And they figure, guaranteed payday, these guys will show up. And then it doesn't look as horrible as it did like for Rory when he withdrew a couple of weeks ago and like forfeited basically $3 million from the PIP fund. So this was like their kind of new idea. RBC. Yeah, at the RBC Heritage. After sort of not a very good Masters. So who can blame him? But he had already skipped one earlier this year. I think he skipped Phoenix. So, this was the second one. So that's why he had to sort of get docked the pay. I mean, I think the criticism is real, and it should be real. I mean, it looks a hell of a lot like Live. I mean, it's going to be a 70 to 80 player field. So it's going to be about half the field, half the size. It doesn't look great. And I think that it's going to look worse just because, I mean, part of watching the PGA, I mean, at least for me, like I'm not a huge fan of this. At least for me, part of watching the tour and part of the exciting stuff is seeing sort of young up and coming players competing with the best in the world. Right. And I don't know if that's the product we're going to be getting in these designated events. They say that they're going to do a sort of like rolling scale where it's going to like, the top 40 players in the world, top 50 players in the world, they're just in automatically. And then like the other 20 are going to be like basically on some sort of like rolling schedule. So guys that have been playing really well for like the 5 events previous, they'll get in. So hot players can get in that maybe are just riding a little bit of a heater. Like we've seen from some of these guys, so someone like Nikolai Hojgaard, who played really well earlier in the season, kind of stacked some good results up, or Akshay Bhatia, something like that. Like those guys could maybe sneak in, but it just doesn't feel good to me for some reason. I mean, I don't think that there's anything that wrong with the system they have now. I mean, like the PIP is basically bonus money anyway. It's like it's not like they like find him. It's not like Rory had to cut a check for $3 million. It's just money that he doesn't get at the end of the season. So right. That's a little bit different too.
Yeah, they're not being fined. They're voluntary forfeiting bonus money, and we'll talk about that with Rory coming up. One of the things about the no cut event is it's just, are you a golf purist, or are you going to embrace the changing landscape that has been necessitated by Live Golf? Mm-hmm. This is not something the PGA elevated events and some of the PIP stuff, no cuts, that kind of stuff is not something that the PGA Tour would have considered without Live. I know PIP was before that, but the other two, if it weren't for Live, this is not something they wouldn't be considering no cut events. They've been cutting people for 150 years, 120 years, whatever. The idea here is that with TV contracts, you don't lose Rory McIlroy if he has a bad 2 days. And if they have a legitimate competing brand on a different network that's 3 clicks away that has guys who are not going to get cut, then you have a very difficult time thinking, well, we'll just get rid of a couple guys, because like some of these guys who get cut, I mean, I suppose on a Friday, like if they just miss the cut, I mean, they could fly up the leaderboard on moving day on Saturday and be in the top 15. It doesn't happen often because like that's a long way to go, but we've never seen it before, so it could happen. And that would make
it's a
great
compressed
television.
Leaderboard, right? I mean, they're having to pass less people after two bad days. So I mean, yeah, I get it. And part of it was, I think John Rahm kind of talked about this a little bit a few weeks ago when people were sort of asking him why he was going to Mexico to play or whatever. After like pretty freshly after winning the Masters. And he was basically like, I want fans that were planning on seeing me to be able to see me. So a lot of this is fan experience too, like driving like ticket sales, because maybe, kids want to go, whatever, see their favorite golfer, but parents got to work on Thursday and Friday. Now they can go see Rory on Saturday or Sunday, So a lot of it's geared at that too, not necessarily TV, I don't think, because, they still won't show them if they're at the bottom of leaderboard unless it's Tiger Woods. But I think that it's more like an in-person thing. And from that perspective, I get it. It just feels strange. And I don't like that it's sort of all of these tournaments that they're going to be doing this in have fairly long histories. And then it's going to be like, oh, this is an asterisk one now. Like the Amex isn't the Amex anymore. It's like this weird event where they go play at Torrey Pines, but it's like different. You know what I mean? And that's the part that I guess sort of just as a purist and like, golf nut, that's the part that feels the weirdest for me. Is just that they're going to like transpose it onto these existing tournaments and sort of just like fundamentally like alter them.
I still think that I still think you're going to see him on TV. Like, first of all, if it's Saturday and we'll just say Rory, he's down at the bottom of the leaderboard. First of all, he's going to be teeing off earlier. And so they're going to show whatever channel or ESPN Plus or whatever
coverage. Yeah.
And it'll just be all Rory. The problem is you won't get to see anybody else. That I think it's actually going to be more frustrating for golf fans who are not hardcore, because you'll end up seeing these guys who are like, these guys aren't playing well, but I bet Davis Riley and I can't watch him because we're having to watch, like Scotty Scheffler hit it in the trees because his thumb hurts or whatever.
Yeah, right. Like, like how much fun is it to watch like Rory shoot like 74 and pout the whole time?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it could be, it can be fun watching Rory pout sometimes. He gets, but I mean, yeah, like it's a weird thing for them to come out and say that they want to do, and it's because they're feeling pressure on the live stuff, and it might change the game for the better, but for the most part, it'll probably just make things a huge cluster, and it'll just take the wind out of the sails a little bit of some of these events where it's like, dude, Friday's fun because you got to make the cut. I don't know, like, now all of a sudden 150 dudes are like playing for guaranteed money. Like, what are we? That's like not even what golf is. I mean, the beauty of golf is that the Netflix show tried to sell this. The beauty of the PGA Tour is that if you don't play well on Thursday and Friday, you don't get a paycheck. Like, right. You don't get to play on Saturday and Sunday. You have to play a good 36 holes in order to move on in advance and collect a paycheck. Once you hit Saturday, you can play like dog crap and still collect a little bit of cash, at least get reimbursed for your food or whatever. But if you don't play well on Thursday and Friday, then you can't play on Saturday. And that puts a lot of pressure on some of the top golfers in the world to play really well for 2 days. And you lose some of that if you start, first of all, requiring that every golfer plays in these events. So now you have the best golfers in the world. And then you're telling them, hey, not only like I'm requiring you to play, but you don't actually have to try, because like I'm still going to pay you regardless, even if your game's a little off. So I think it changes the whole dynamic of the PGA Tour if they were to do this.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting that the PGA Tour has been fairly dynamic during this period of trying to sort of modify their schedule. I wouldn't be shocked if they, Jay Monahan seems to have really dug his heels in on this, PGA Tour commissioner. I wouldn't be shocked if, so this year we had the designated events, cool. Next year, maybe we have, however many no-cut events. And I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to change it for the season after that. You know what I mean? Like this could just be a one-off deal.
Yeah, or it's like, I mean, they have been trying different things. So it could be less elevated events, maybe some no-cut events, whatever. I mean, you're right. They have been subject to change a lot of this stuff because they're so worried about this new
so much of it's just player feedback. Yeah. And like they're getting, it's like this committee of players who are more or less at the upper echelon. I feel like Rory probably is really driving the ship on this for a lot of it, and Scotty and Ron probably as well. but I'm not sure. And the critique has always been, that like, are we thinking about the guy who's 125th on the money list perennially, who's not going to get to play in these events, who's going to miss out on any opportunity to get points,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And I
Yeah.
think that's really the sort of worry.
How can young golfers get better if they're not given the opportunity to succeed in some of these events?
Right. Because they have so many of these designated events too, that like the bigger golfers aren't going to play anywhere that's not designated.
Yeah.
They don't need to.
And that makes it difficult on non-designated events because the field is like weak.
Exactly. And we've seen that already a little bit this year.
Yeah. And so now it's like, okay, you raise my interest for waste management, but you sunk it for Mexico. And unless you're a diehard, like, I'm not sure that that's the right way to do things. But golf is a weird sport and it can change a lot quickly. And the golfers kind of just get behind everything because they like playing golf. It's not like baseball. You don't have all these owners who got to come together and agree on stuff. So I hope they do keep changing, and I hope they keep changing in some different ways. Now, Nate, one of the things we got to do here is we got to thank one of our sponsors. Got the hat on. That's Beard Vet. Incredible coffee. Listen up, Patriots. Are you tired of drinking coffee from mega corporations that do not give a rip about you? Well, then you got to put down that cup of regret and grab yourself some Beard Vet coffee. Beard Vet coffee. It's darn good coffee from a company that is veteran founded, veteran focused, and beard operated. And let's be real. If you're not drinking Beard Vet coffee, you might as well be sipping on a cup of burnt soy and tears. So join the ranks of the unapologetic. Go to beardvet.com. That's beardvet.com. and taste the freedom. Okay, we love Beard Vet. We want to thank them as always. Love all the swag I get to rep for them. Okay, so right before we get to our guy Rory, very quickly, Chan Cam. Where in the world is Chan Kim?
I think Chanimal's taking another week off. It's what it looks like to me. I cannot confirm, but I cannot find him on any odds board anywhere. The DP World Tour is in Antwerp, Belgium this week. He is not in the field there. Corn Ferry is off, so he's not in the field there either. So I think that Chan Kim is probably just resting and recovering after some sort of globetrotting earlier in the season.
You checked the Byron Nelson.
I checked buddy. I checked everything.
Okay.
He's not.
Do you know his like his local country club? Maybe they're having.
I think he lives in LA. Maybe it's like
they're having like a tournament. Yeah, they could be having like a like a potluck, like fundraiser, maybe a little scratch golf tournament, scramble, foursome. I might
just get out there and just glad handle a little bit,
Yeah, I think your next step in this research project is find out where he golfs on a regular basis and establish a relationship with the pro, so that you can get a little bit more information on Chan Cam.
I gotta know.
There's no way that grind horse is not at least out on the links.
He's probably tuning up for. He might be in the PGA Championship. He might be eligible.
We'll do a whole separate show on that.
He usually manages to qualify for the U.S. Open. I mean, he misses the cut every year, but he usually qualifies for the U.S. Open. So maybe he's just tuning up for U.S. Open qualifying.
Okay, well,
through regional and sectional,
we shall see. Okay, let's go to Rory. Then we'll move on to the AT&T.
Okay.
So, and we'll do this kind of quickly because we touched on it a little bit. Rory missed the RBC after the Masters, citing some mental health and family issues. And so that was the second elevated event that he's missed, and a lot of people complained. Like, a lot of golfers complained about him missing this event. Not loudly, but not like through a letter. I mean, it was like pretty, people kind of rolled their eyes at this for whatever reason. And the PGA Tour came out this week and they said that they were going to fine him $3 million. Now that fine just comes from his PIP money. Rory is the richest golfer in the world, like as far as active golfers, other than maybe Phil, I guess, and one of the most successful. So the $3 million is nothing to him. The PIP money is a bonus. It just comes from their player engagement contract stuff that they have with social media or whatever. But it is interesting because players were interested to see if they actually if they were going to fine him. or if they were going to let that slide. But they did. How do you feel about this? I mean, is this good for the game? Or is it nonsense? I mean, is it not even a story?
I mean, I don't know if it's a story. I mean, I don't think like, skipping this event's a story. Like, I mean, $3 million is, $3 million, but for Rory, I don't think it's going to change anything from that perspective. And, they may find a way to, bump him up in the PIP some other way that sort of makes this hurt a little bit less for him. I mean, I think that the bigger story is just like, what happened to his game? Like, why does he just suck all the time now? I mean, like Quail Hollow is like a place where he's been dominant in his career, and he basically limped along to a tie for 47th, which is like more or less the worst he can do there. So I think, and I think it's also fair to wonder, the PGA Tour, these guys are all more or less independent contractors, right? Like they don't have any guarantees for their job. They, as long as they're playing well, they have, status, but, if they're not, then they don't. And someone like Rory has accrued, enough cachet to be able to coast for quite a while on the PGA Tour. But on the other hand, what the PGA Tour has asked is like all of these independent contractors to really be the standard bearers for the sport in a way that is really exhausting for them, I think. Every week, Rory has to juggle questions about LIV. He has to juggle questions about where the tour is going to go. He has to juggle questions about, at the Masters, what his legacy is going to be if he's going to complete the career Grand Slam. Why he's missing these, like all that stuff. And it's like, I don't know how much you can put on him where he has to speak on so many issues and be so knowledgeable and produce these sound bites that the PGA Tour wants. And it just seems like they're putting an undue amount of pressure on him, given all of that, because when Tiger was in his prime, he didn't say shit to the media. Like he never talked. Like he just was like, no, thank you for having me. Goodbye. And then he goes and wins golf tournaments. But he was like the most boring presence. And the only people that put a lot of expectations on him to really sort of like perform as a personality was Nike, who was paying him hundreds of millions of dollars. The PGA Tour is not doing that.
Here's a question for you. If the PGA Tour had these rules 10 years ago, does Tiger skip like 3 elevated events?
Probably.
Phil probably would have skipped like 100.
Well, I don't know if he could have afforded to 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's true. Phil's always been
mercurial with his finances.
Yeah. Phil probably would have been like, hell yeah, elevated events. I could win $20 million and it's not the Masters or whatever, $3 million, whatever. It's a huge purse. I mean, he'd be like, yeah, that's absolutely sign me up. But yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, I think in a time like now where we have all these golfers who are all simultaneously dominant, yeah, a lot of it falls on Rory, but at the same time, you don't give him special privilege. But he is the most famous, best golfer in the world in some regard. Maybe John Rahm and Scheffler can claim that, but not for the certainly longevity.
Like, legacy wise, I think that he's the most, he's the most decorated active golfer.
He won his first tournament in 2010.
Around. Right.
Yeah. Like he won his first tournament in 2010 and he won a tournament in October. So like the guy wins tournaments every year and he's been doing it for 15 years, 13 years. So, maybe different rules apply. He doesn't play as much. I think you're right to be worried about his game. Me and Keith were all over him because of all his Quail Hall success. But yeah, Wells Fargo tied for 47th. The WGC, he was third, but that was match play. Cut at the Masters, cut at the Players, tied for second at API. But I mean, dude, like he hasn't been playing. I mean, like it's just the elevated events, and that's fine. But he's just not really. I'm not surprised that his game is shaky. He's not playing that much. So and he says he's not injured. So who knows.
And the other thing is he didn't really get a huge break. I mean, he didn't play in December, but he did a lot of traveling like late last year. I mean, he was all over the place doing these DP World Tour events too,
that's true.
Saudi Arabia, going to all these places. So there was more to it than just that. And that's kind of in the limited stuff that he's sort of spoken about. It was sort of like, I've just been going a lot. Like I just needed like a week off. It just feels like it's go, go, go. And that to me is just the tour. There's just so much pressure on these guys to go, go, go. It used to be that they could just take a week off and nobody cared. And now they take a week off and it's, this huge story. So you're not even able to really relax on your day off because everyone's talking about how you just forfeited $3 million.
Yeah.
Versus like
And,
years past, it's like Tiger just withdrew on like Monday or whatever, and everyone was like, "Oh, Tiger being Tiger, whatever."
Yeah. And we talk about what happens with Rory, what's happened with Rory's game. It's just his putting. I mean, this year, strokes gained putting, he's 167th. He's losing strokes on the green. Even at the Wells Fargo, it was minus 0.02, which was pretty low for an event where people putted well. So, I mean, once again, if he can't find the flat stick, there's really no reason to bet him, I think. And Keith and I were kind of suckers, and you were right about that. I mean, you said, look, y'all are falling in love with the idea, Rory, not Rory, and you were right. But you were wrong about everything else. So that negates that. So there we go. Okay. I think enough of that. Ben, we've been talking about some of these golf topics for a long time. People want us to get to our loser picks here. We're all a little hurting for some winners, but we got some this time. So before we do that, Nate, if you could just tell us a little bit about TPC Craig
Ranch.
Craig Ranch. Yeah. I always write down TPC Craig Nelson because it's the Byron Nelson. Tell us a little bit about the course here. Because there's some weird things that have actually happened and they changed some stuff.
Well, this is only the second year, or this is the third year they played it. They used to play it somewhere else. So really all we've seen is like KH Lee dominating since they moved to TPC Craig Ranch. It's not a terribly difficult course. It's one of the easiest on like the TPC rotation of courses that they have. There's just nothing like that, like massively difficult. The rough is fairly short, and it appears to be not very dense because like the weather hasn't really been cooperative in terms of rainfall in Dallas. So the grass isn't super lush, so the rough will be easy to navigate. The fairways are already wide to begin with. Greens are easy to hit. They'll be smooth, but not, nightmarishly fast, probably 11 or 12 on the stimp meter. So overall, this course is not a course that has a ton of teeth, which is why we've seen KH Lee go a bazillion under par 2 years in a row. So, I mean, just from like a course standpoint, it feels like a course that, is pretty much the standard of what we talk about. You want guys that, have good approach games because they give themselves more opportunities. You want guys that make a lot of birdies because you're going to have to here. So guys that, tend to be more comfortable shooting around par, this isn't going to be the course for them. And most of them probably just skip this week. Someone like Fitz or Lowry, like they're not going to play because like this is just not a course that suits them.
Yeah. So you're right. A couple things about the course as well. It was a par 72 last year. They changed it.
Oh yeah, it's par 71 now. They shortened one of the par fives.
Yeah, they shortened one of the par fives. So we got a par 71 instead of a par 72. It's a little bit shorter than it has been the last 2 years. A couple of things to look out, like you're saying. Driving distance can be important because the fairways are long, so don't have to be very accurate. You just bomb it off the tee. Approach is always important in a course like this because you want to get it up on the green and get it up and down. Birdies are better. We know is important because this is you're going to have to post about minus 22, 22 under in order to win this. So you want guys who can attack the greens and are just monsters with the birdie scores. So that's really important to me. There's a couple long par threes. There's at least one or two. So if you're like really getting in the weeds, some of the par three numbers at like the par three 200 yards and over. If you see some guys you like down in that range, that's an important stat because they'll be able to take advantage of those long par threes where you have to use a longer stick. And then bent grass, which they've only played a couple events on bent grass this year. Most of it's been Bermuda. That's just how it goes in the South. But these greens are bent grass. So for me, I looked at some strokes gained bent grass. And if you're interested in the strokes gained on grass, go to weknowfantasy.com. That's our buddy Nate Brown's website. And he runs a lot of models on there, but he's got terrific models for grass. So if you're ever interested on who putts well on what grass, which can be a really nice statistic to have, he's got you covered there. So you can do that and give him a little shout out for the the bent grass statistics that I'm going to use. Wide fairways, bent grass greens, long par threes, shorter course this year. Need a good approach game. Need to putt pretty well. I really looked at some putters this week, I think, Nate, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, it's going to be probably a putting contest. I mean, I guess the one other stat that I'd throw in is this course has a lot of, we talked about it already, briefly with that par 5 they shortened to 47 or 48 yards off of it and made it a almost 500-yard par 4. There's a lot of long par 4s on this course. So if you could isolate, par 4 scoring from 450 to 500, that's going to be the most popular range for this course too.
Yeah, I think you're right. So we got a lot of statistics, but this is a tune-up course, man. I mean, we're
100%. They're not going here to get bodied by this golf course. Like, they're going to get plenty of that next week.
Yeah, they got a major next week. So the guys are gonna shoot low. So if you like some of these guys who shoot low in weird courses and just kind of come out of nowhere, you might want to think about it for something like AT&T. Now, before we get into our picks, and I got a bunch of them for you, I know Nate does too, we need to thank Ignacio at Ignite 45. If you're a small business owner struggling to generate leads and revenue, then this message is absolutely for you. In today's economy, a winning digital strategy is a must. Without it, your business could fall behind and lose out. Many business owners struggle with outdated websites and no real presence on Google when people are searching for their services. But don't be discouraged, because Ignite 45 can fix that. They design great websites that turn visitors into paying customers and create SEO strategies that rank your business on top of search results. Ignite 45 is also the first digital agency dedicated to helping your business reach millions on your social media platform of your choice. If you're ready to see real results and work with a digital partner that shares your values, then give them a call today at 720-740-1776. That's 720-740-1776, or visit www.ignite45.com/Godzilla. That's www.ignite45.com/Godzilla. Use promo code Godzilla to save $100 on your digital needs. Okay, Nate. So here we go. What's in your bag? We're going to start with the driver. We're going to go rapid fire here. We've really shortened our picks up a lot in these segments, so we'll go pretty quickly. These are your heavy hitter, 20-1, somewhere around that range. Who is your favorite for this week?
I like KH Lee. The results are just like undeniable. Like, it's sort of comical at the top of the board. It's sort of like a John Rahm type situation. Scotty's plus 360 right now in this field. But KH Lee's still, 22-1, and all the guy does is just crush her. He's 51 under par in the last 2 years they played this tournament. Shot 26 to 25 under par, which is just, or 51 under par. So it's just like ridiculous. Whatever the reason is, he just loves this course and he just tears it apart. So I don't see any reason like not to think that he won't just play well here again, particularly the form that he's in. I mean, made 6 of his past 7 cuts. He's sort of climbing the world ranking really fast. He's top 50 in the world now. And he played really well last week at Quail Hollow, which is a totally different kind of golf course. And he gained strokes ball striking. He gained strokes putting. The game looks like it's in good shape. And like, all he does is dominate here. I mean, I think that you're getting value because Scotty's in the field, but I don't see any reason that if you're looking towards the top of the leaderboard, why you'd shy away from KH Lee and want to take like Tyrrell Hatton at 12-1 instead.
The top of this odds board is a rogues gallery of infuriating golfers. Like,
yes.
Okay, Scotty plus 360. Yeah, whatever. All right. So I win $5. Great. Tyrrell Hatton, number 2 on the list. Look, Hatton's been playing amazing golf, but if you're telling me I'm betting Tyrrell Hatton at 12-1, no, thank you. Absolute pass. Jason Day, 14-1. How many times have we sat in this chair and talked about how Jason Day is due, only for him to not deliver? I mean, I know I just opened the show by saying, stick with your guns, stick with the analysis. Jason Day, baby, he's playing well, but I can't justify 14-1. Tom Kim, 16-1. Look, I love Tom Kim. He's going to be one of the greatest golfers, but come on. Hideki
not his type of
Matsuyama,
course.
not at all. Matsuyama, he's been playing okay. He's like he's at top 20 all the time, but he hasn't put it together yet this year. And then KH Lee, the fact that KH Lee's 20-1, KH Lee should be 11-1. It should be Scotty, Lee, Hatton. And the fact that you're getting 22-1 on Lee makes it undeniable. Everybody who does this seriously or for a living is on KH Lee, and they should be at those odds. I'd also take him at plus 500 for a top 5. Are you kidding me? 5-1 odds for a top 5 for a guy who's shot in 51 under in what is it?
2 years,
144 holes.
Yeah.
You got to be kidding me. I mean, like that's just that almost feels like free money. So unless they know something we don't, I'm with you with my driver. I have KH Lee as well. And I just think the rest of these guys are a joke. There's no way I'm taking Matt Kuchar. I'd love all these
25-1. Like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
That's
gross. And he's played like trash all year. And he's just, he always creeps up because of his reputation and his ability to kind of win these weak fields, but he hasn't done it lately. So, yeah, there just isn't a lot there that I like. So, we're both on KH Lee 22-1. If I had to give out another one, I'd probably say Jason Day at 14-1. Maybe you get a top 5 at plus 330 is kind of nice for him, but he really hasn't been performing. He hasn't been delivering, and I've been on him for a while. So if he wins this week, I mean, I'm just gonna like quit. This will be like the worst 2 weeks of my life. So, and that's saying something in what has been a torturous existence since I was arrived in Memphis some 33 years ago. So I hope Jason Day, I mean, I'd love for him to win, but not this week, just in the week I pick him. So our driver, we got the same KH Lee 22-1. Let's go to our iron, Mr. Reliable, dudes who we love to bet and who sometimes give us the W. Who's your iron?
I don't even know if this is a guy that, sometimes give me a W. But someone who's sort of in this odds range, I guess, that I'm looking at is Steven Jaeger at, 40-1. Like, this is
interesting.
It's a pretty pop. I've seen him pop up a few places.
Yeah, me too.
It's mostly a tee to green bet. The stats have been really good, sort of ball striking wise, particularly with approach. He's driving the ball pretty well. Short game's always been good. The problem is that he's just putted like trash. And he hit the ball really well at the Wells Fargo and didn't have much to show for it other than a top 30 finish because he just lost strokes putting like every day. Basically what a day for 4 days. So, from that perspective, he's been playing pretty well. Wells Fargo is not like a great comp, but, tied for 18th in Mexico, tied for 27th at the Wells Fargo. So in a field that's pretty bereft of talent, he feels like a guy that's sort of trending in the right direction if he could just find a hot putter for 1 week. Everything else is there.
Yeah, we'll see. And these are greens where he can kind of put it together. So he has been a trendy pick. And you're right. I'm not exactly sure that it's old reliable, but you never know.
But there's not many old reliable guys like when you get down and it's like betting odds. Like, he's no more reliable than, Minwoo Lee or Seamus Power, I guess.
Hey, careful on my boy Seamus Power. That's my iron there.
All right.
Love my guy Seamus Power here at 40-1. Listen, Seamus Power. I mean, how could you not love him? He's been a trendy pick too all week. People are all over him. Tied for 17th here in 2022. In 2022 last year, he was plus 1.27 in strokes gained on the green. So I really like that because I'm looking at these guys to be just birdie machines. So I like that he putted well here last year. His approach game here left much to be desired, but he'll get that figured out. Birdie or better, that's a percentage that I'm looking at. He's 23rd on tour, 23.87% birdies or better. So I'm just really looking for him to take advantage of some of those birdies. Tied for 18th at the Wells Fargo, so he's got a top 20 finish last week. He's probably a guy who you might want to also consider like in a top 10 where he's plus 360. I think that's a good prop bet as well. I put a frowny face by his strokes gained approach, which he's minus 0.280, 155th on tour. So again, last year he sucked in the approach. He's still tied for 17th. If he could put it together a little bit, I think at 40-1, he's not a bad bet. but he's going to really have to take advantage of some of these wide fairways, and he's going to have to get up in the green on these long par fours and score low. And if he doesn't score low on Thursday, Nate, I'm not even gonna. I mean, forget it. Like, you can just cross him off the list.
Yeah,
But
I mean, we've been talking about Seamus Power just sort of like texting too, and like I have like this thing that I've been ruminating on, which is like the Seamus Power principle, which is like if a course doesn't make sense to me, if I can't just like if it's kind of a weak field and it's just like kind of a silly course, it doesn't really have anything like that's a defining characteristic, a thing that I can point to and say this stat is important, then Seamus Power always does well. Like, you know, like his last win at like the Butterfield Bermuda Championship. It's like that's a silly course. Like, you know, and like then he pops up and wins. You know, he played really well against JT Poston at the Rocket Mortgage in Detroit. Silly golf course, birdie fest. He wins. Like if you need just a guy that goes really low, Seamus Power can do that.
The Seamus Power principle.
Yeah.
Right up there with Derrida's of grammatology. Okay. So that's my iron. Seamus Power, 40-1. Love the odds. Book it. Now we got our wedges, Nate. Wedge is a guy who never wins, but you just can't quit it. Just like that lob wedge, which I figured out how to hit the other day and then lost it immediately, which is exactly like what these guys do. So go ahead and tell us your wedge, and I'll go with mine. And then we'll move on.
I mean, this is a guy that I actually have bet a lot. And I think that we've spoken on the show about my well-documented love for guys that just do like one thing really well.
That's right.
And Christian Bezuidenhout is just a dude that can flat out roll the rock, and almost every other aspect of his game is pretty much complete liability. If he's not within 10 yards of the green, it's not awesome. Sometimes he's like below average in distance, like way below average in distance. So he's short. He's not super accurate. He's a mediocre iron player, but man, can this guy putt. And he's, you know, kind of flirting in that sort of like mid-range area that I was sort of like especially targeting fairly heavily. He's 55-1 this week. And this just doesn't seem like a course that puts that much stress on the parts of his game that are weak. And if it does just turn into a straight up putting contest, which it could, then I'd like to have a guy who's one of the elite putters on tour. So, you know, that's sort of where my goal is there. But, you know, he's also never won on tour. Every time I bet him, it's just like an exercise in frustration. But, you know, there's signs of life from him that I haven't seen recently. He's gained strokes on an approach in the last 4 events. So, you know, things are coming together. Eventually, it's all going to kind of gel. It just hasn't yet.
Say his odds one more time.
55-1.
Okay, 55-1. I love that. I love where your head's at, because I've got another elite putter for you. And no, it's not Maverick McNeely.
Okay.
Taylor Montgomery.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, Taylor Montgomery. So here's the biggest problem with him. He hasn't. I didn't see him on the board the last 2 years here, so I don't think he's played here yet.
Nope, he's a rookie this year.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well, that's why. So first year. However, already, and we've talked about this before, just through texting, generational talent with the flat stick. Birdie or better. He's 6th on tour, 26%. That's a stat I'm looking for. I want guys who are going to be just crushing the birdies. Difficult, like, to look at his results because he's so young. Cut at the Wells Fargo, cut at RBC, tied for 22nd at the Valero, but the Valero was birdie central and always has been. That's a good sort of comp there. He's 3rd in strokes gained putting just in general, which is terrific for a guy as young as he is. 51st in driving distance. So it's not that he can't hit it off the tee. I mean, and that's that old school, like, okay, bomber off the tee, gets it in the fairway, and then can get onto the green and putt well. And then strokes gained on bent grass, he is plus 1.309. That's his average on bent grass. And he's played, I think, 8 holes, or 8 rounds. So that's a little, you know, bent grass, they just haven't played that much, but he's played at least 2 tournaments, I think, on bent grass. And he's one of the better putters on bent grass, because he's one of the better putters in general. I don't know, 40-1, maybe like not so great for a guy as young as he is, but but I still really like Taylor Montgomery at 40-1. And I think, I mean, I'm right there with you. You got to have some guys who can putt this week. And I wouldn't be surprised if you saw him up around the leaderboard on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I loved earlier in the season, and then he kind of trailed off. He was hitting the ball really good early in the season, and now he kind of hasn't been, which has been a problem. It's like his iron game and his driver both sort of abandoned him simultaneously. But yeah, I mean, he's a fun pick. He's a guy that I really like to watch play. So yeah.
Yeah. And you've picked him at way higher odds. I mean, he's a guy.
Oh my God, yes.
He gets to those triple digits and you're just going to hammer him all the time. Now, in this event, I think because it's a weaker field and because he's such good on the green, you're just going to get a lower number, but I'm okay with that price because I do think that this is an event that he can win if he gets hot. And just keeps sinking those birdie putts. So we'll see with him. We're coming up. We've got our putter, the bet and regret guy, and our hybrid, which is the long shot. Before we do that, though, we want to thank targettrading.co. With all the fear out there about the economy and personal finances, many people are turning to trading markets to help support themselves and their families. Trading is risky. There's no doubt about that. It's something that should be entered lightly, and that is all the more reason to get proper training. Do not enter into trading without some training. Target Trading Academy is considered the #1 futures trading education company in the industry. Over the last 15 years, the team has developed successful, respectable, repeatable trading strategies, and Target Trading Academy delivers these trading methods to you in a highly structured and effective learning environment. Want proof? Got to check out those reviews on Trustpilot. Guys like Chris say, listen, Target Trading Academy is a step to a better financial freedom and quality of life. Whatever the reason you may want to learn and do futures trading, you will not be disappointed with choosing this academy. But don't listen to the reviews only. Find out for yourself. Go to targettradingacademy.com, sign up for a free virtual campus tour. You can see Patrick and co in action and see firsthand whether the #1 trading education company in the game. Target Trading Academy. Go to targettrading.co. That's targettrading.co, or call 888-203-3731. That's 888-203-3731. Okay, Nate, moving right along. We're throwing out our picks here. You can check my Twitter at John Matt Fred if you want a list of everyone I'm betting for this week. Also, check the Godzilla Wins Twitter at Godzilla Wins Big in order to see all our clips on the show and everything else, and get some fun promo codes as well. Bet and regret. I got a great bet and regret. Everybody I bet is now bet and regret. So I don't even know why we have this stupid category. So go ahead and tell us yours, and I'll give you mine.
Minwoo Lee. I just don't know what I'm doing here. But he's a guy who's
I feel like he's been sort of trendy too, though.
He has been, but like, there's no reason for it. Like, I think I'm just buying into like a lot of other smart people I read being like, oh, Minwoo Lee's a good play this week. But like, there's no evidence to back this up. Like, he was great in Europe. He had a really good end of the year last year in Europe, just stacking top 10s, top 5s. And then he came to America and he hadn't played a ton on the PGA Tour. And, he kind of popped up in the Players, which was just his 3rd PGA Tour start. And, damn near won it, finished tied for 6th. And then after that, he's been garbage. He just hasn't been good. Missed the cut of the Masters, missed the cut of RBC, tied for 31st at Dell Technologies. He just hasn't been good. And he's been like just hemorrhaging strokes off, like with his irons, even at the Players. I mean, he sort of overcame a bad iron game to be really competitive with the Players, but it's just because he putted out of his mind. So he's just, there's no metric I can look at that says like, Minwoo is just poised and ready to go, like we could have with Wyndham last week and we didn't. There's nothing with Minwoo here that says like, oh yeah, he's sitting on a big tournament coming up. This is mostly just a play based on like the idea of Minwoo Lee, which is he's really long off the tee, always has been in Europe, and he's always been an elite putter. And you figure like this is a course that shouldn't punish some like sort of mediocre iron shots. He has an edge with a lot of these other things, but in terms of actually translating those into results, there's nothing to suggest that like this is the moment that he does it. So that's my bet and regret guy. I mean, he's got pretty fun odds, if you want to bet him. But I just am not really seeing it. I like, after I put it in, I'm like 40-1 really, like, I don't for a guy who's missed 2 cuts in a row, who's, still sort of getting his feet wet on the PGA Tour. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So that's my bet grad.
Okay. It's not a bad bet in grad. He has been all over the place lately, but 40-1 are pretty weak odds for a guy who's really not playing that well. That's a weak field. That's why we have it. Next week, he'll be like 110-1 or 90-1 or whatever.
Yeah.
Or at least 65, the Fowler line, as we call it. Okay. My bet and regret here is my boy Patton Kizzire at I just took him top 20. That's how much my balls have been cut off lately. Plus 450 for a top 20 finish. I don't know. Maybe he can get there. Listen. Okay, here's the case for Patton. Terrific.
Give it to me.
Terrific 4 rounds in 2021 at this course, tied for 3rd. But that feels like a long time ago. Tied for 83rd last year. So he made the cut. You could just bet him to make the cut. Maybe that'll work. Plus 1, he's so strokes gained plus 1.71 putting in 2021 at that course. So he putts well historically on bent grass. So there you go. There's my bent grass right there. And also in plus 1.61 in 2021 on strokes gained approach. So again, if he puts his approach game putting together, that was a good year for him, obviously. Birdies or better, 60th on tour, but that's not bad for a guy who's like odds are just in the toilet. 22% there. But again, the problem is he missed the Wells Fargo cut. He missed the Mexico Open cut. He tied for 31st at RBC, but that feels like a lifetime ago. And this year on bent grass, he's not gaining strokes. I mean, it's just not a good pick. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the only reason I picked him is because 2 years ago he tied for 3rd. And I figure, well, his odds are great and maybe he can get a top 20 just by catching a little bit more magic, but he's not playing well. And that's why nobody is picking him in the golf world.
Yeah. And he tends to be a little bit better on shorter courses than sort of longer courses. Although, there's not that much trouble for him to get in with a driver here. So I don't know.
No, that's the thing. I mean, if he can, I just feel like plus 450 for top 20, you're getting almost 5-1 odds on a guy who has finished 3rd at this tournament just 2 years ago. It's not like his game was on fire 2 years ago. I mean, he's just been about the same guy, I think. So, we'll see. So and then look, it's a bet and regret. I mean, I'm not like confident that I love it. But I got it anyway. All right. Long shot. I do love my long shot. But why don't you go first?
Oh, this one is, I feel like usually I just go so deep down the barrel for, some off the wall long shot, but I too am struggling to find a lot of reasons to go that deep down the board this time. Michael Kim, I get is sort of the longest shot I have. He was like 75, 80-1 a lot of places. Now he's like 55-1. So it seems like the whole world's sort of caught wind of Michael Kim as well. But this is mostly just on the strength of he's been playing pretty good golf lately. He hasn't missed a cut since February. At the Honda, he's got a couple top 10s at Puerto Rico and the Wells Fargo, and he just played really good at Quail Hollow, which was sort of shocking. Approach game was elite, off the tee, incredible. Gain strokes putting, was solid around the greens. Everything sort of looks like it's peaking. And if you deep dive on his career, he has won a Birdie Fest before. He won the John Deere about 5 years ago and shot 27 under par there. So he can do this on this type of golf course. It's a pretty big ask. And the reason the odds are long is because this is a fairly new sort of Michael Kim renaissance. He's a guy that sort of struggled to keep his status. Really highly touted amateur, bounced down to the Korn Ferry, bounced back up to the PGA Tour, and now seems to have found himself while also establishing excellent Twitter presence. Love that guy on Twitter.
Yes. Yeah. So I love Michael Kim on Twitter as well. He's not only is he just kind of, he engages a lot on Twitter, but he's just really, he's really honest and very earnest about how his career is and the different experiences he has. He does these kind of weird takeaways that just, they don't feel like, it doesn't feel like he's trying to get engagement. He's not right. 5 takeaways from the Wells Fargo. John Rahm's a misogynist. I mean, he's just like, yeah. So yeah, I got to play with John Rahm at this. We grew a group together, and it was awesome because he's like it was so cool watching him play golf because he's like the best golfer ever, and stuff like that. Like talking about what it's like in the clubhouse. It's just I love following on Twitter, so everybody should follow Michael Kim on Twitter.
Yeah, he had like a little bit of he caused like a little bit of a thing actually this week on Twitter because he was like, on the practice green or whatever putting, and some caddy or player had marked off certain areas as 3% grade, 2% grade, 1% grade for the greens in terms of slope, which is what the guys that use aim point system use. And Michael Kim in his caddy realized that all of those numbers were not right. And he's like, is somebody just like deliberately trying to like mess with me? He's like, I'm trying to like read the greens and all these numbers are scattered everywhere. They're all wrong.
Yeah.
See, it's like accusing someone of sabotaging him.
Yeah. And look, that got almost 400,000 views.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that is the engagement. That's way up from, his like him complaining about the his pro-am list of the pairing. So he's a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun to follow. So everybody should give him a follow and bet him this week, I guess. My long shot here is my man Grayson Sig at 180-1.
Okay, there we go.
I actually am recommending you take him top 30 at plus 280 on DraftKings. Go to DraftKings.com and sign up for the promo code Godzilla and get $150 on a $5 bet. So top 30 at plus 280 or 180-1 if you want to take him outright. Listen, I don't have a ton written down here, but the man can roll the ball on bent grass in 2 tournaments this year. He is plus 1.259 average on bent grass, which is like pretty high up there on the top. It's like 6th or 7th of the guys who have been putting on bent grass. He got cut last year, so that's not good. But he did tie T18 at the Mexico Open, which was about the only positive I could find in his results as of late. So, I'm thinking maybe he slips into the top 30 here just based on the fact that he putts well on bent grass. But that is a really cold take and is sort of silly to say on a podcast. But here we are. And if he does it, I'm going to be the only one who was on him, and I'm definitely going to be touting that one. So
yeah,
we'll see.
You should be.
Yeah, I would look like a genius. That'll forgive me for all my Wyndham Clark woes. So,
being the one guy that picks a guy that's missed 4 out of his last 5 cuts to win a golf tournament at 180-1's a pretty hot. That's pretty scorching take.
Yeah, well, yeah. Look, he putts well on bent grass for the 2 times he did it this year. So yeah, you get on that bent grass, man. It's just a whole new ball game. I think so. We'll see. I don't know. I don't have bent grass at my home course. It's just weeds.
It's just mowed weeds.
Yeah. I don't think it's Bermuda either. It's just like clover.
It's just like here's grass. It grows everywhere in Mississippi.
It's not Poana, I can tell you that.
It's sure not Poana.
Sometimes it's mud. Okay, so listen, before we go here, we're going to talk about some live drama just very quickly, but we got to thank Rosie's. Listen, today's show is brought to you by Rosie's Gaming Emporium. Rosie's has paid out over $475 million in jackpots so far this year. That number grows every day. I'm not going to read you the live read because we love Rosie's so much that we're going to be there starting July 13th. My father, Godzilla of Truth, at Colonial Downs in New Kent, Virginia. He's got a suite. He does a show from there. Then he gets to the ticket and he just starts betting the ponies. The guy has a problem, but he loves Rosie's Gaming Emporium. You need to call 188. No. You go to Rosie's Gaming Emporium and sign up for a free Rosie's Rewards card and instantly receive $25 to $1,000 in free play for your first visit. So go to Rosie's Gaming Emporium, signing up for some free play, and you will have a lot of fun. Love those rewards. If you have a gambling problem in Virginia, call 1-888-532-3500. That's 1-888-532-3500. We want to thank Rosie's for partnering with us. Okay, Nate, let's do a little live drama and get out of here. Saved it for the end because live is the specter haunting all of our dreams. So Little live drama. The big lawsuit that was a sort of a class action suit is slowly dwindling. Patrick Reed and Matt Jones, I think, are the only two people left on this suit.
Bryson and Matt Jones are the only two.
That's right.
left.
Bryson. Oh, yeah. Sorry to put some disrespect on Patrick Reed's name. Peter Uihlein dropped out of the suit this week. What does that say about the state of the lawsuit and live golf?
I don't know. I mean, I think that it just more signifies the state of the lawsuit, which is this thing's gonna take forever. I mean, they're not even thinking about going to trial for another year before they even start to do stuff. Who knows what happens now that the Saudi sports, the public investment fund of Saudi Arabia, I guess, that owns 93% of Live. Who knows what kind of documents they're even going to turn over in this discovery, because they joined the lawsuit with all these players. So like, it could just take years. I mean, you're talking about an organization run by one of the weirdest, most closed off countries in the world. They're trying to fight a battle in US court. It just doesn't make any sense. So I think all these guys are just seeing the writing on the wall. They got sort of what they wanted, which was to get into majors, I think. I don't think Peter Uihlein at this point is thinking, God, I really wish that I had a chance to compete at like the Zurich Classic. So I think that it's just mostly just a signal that these guys are just sort of losing interest now. They've mostly gotten what they wanted from the PGA Tour, which was major status. There's no reason to just be tied up in lawyer fees and whatever else, just out of principle, and like to file an antitrust lawsuit against the PGA Tour, which is what this is.
So we talked a little bit about Live last week, with Keith, and about how some of the stuff that their antics were sort of warming up to. And Keith talked about how they still don't deserve world golf rankings, which he made a pretty impressive argument for that. I think one that I agree with. This is the type of crap that I don't care about when it comes to Live. Like, I just don't care.
Especially someone like Peter Uihlein, like dipping out of it. Like, Peter Uihlein's a nobody. Like, he was a guy who was just like scratching around on the PGA Tour. He was a really good amateur. His dad was the CEO of Acushnet when he was coming up, which is the parent company of Titleist. He trained at, all the best schools in Bradenton, like, the golf academy for high school and blah, blah. Like, he's always been a guy that's like a silver spoon. Like, Peter Uihlein is like the least of my concerns for these guys. Like, he was never very good on a PGA Tour anyways. He never really found any footing as a professional for the last 10 years. Like, he was easy for them to pick off. It doesn't make any sense that he's making news for dropping out of the suit.
Yeah, right. I mean, he's kind of he's not someone to be taken seriously even on Live with their 40% fields.
No.
I mean, yeah. So it's just one of those things where I saved it for the end because it's not really news. I don't really care about this lawsuit. At some point, it'll probably just go away, or they'll settle in some way. And I think that's what Bryson is hoping for. But we'll see. I mean, it's interesting to think that maybe Bryson sticks it out for the long run, just because we know his personality, likes to be the heel. So like maybe, but I don't know. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that just I don't really care about. I don't want to talk about.
It's just a nothing story. And like I said, like May 2024 is when the trial's slated to begin. Like, get out of here. And then it's an antitrust suit, so it's going to take years. Like how much time? I mean, a lot of these guys, like, Live Golf will have folded by the time this thing, meets any sort of resolution.
Yeah, for real. Absolutely. Well, that's I mean, maybe Live Golf is here to stay. I don't know. They've certainly ushered in a new era of golf. So we'll see. Well, everyone, thank you for listening to this week's episode of Clubhouse Picks, brought to you by Godzilla Wins. You can download and listen to Clubhouse Picks on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Please be sure to download, rate, review if you like the show. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. We will see you next week, Nate, for the PGA Championship. Huge show. Yes. We got a guest scheduled to come for you. We're going to bring the heat with our picks, and we're going to hammer Wyndham Clark. Happy golfing.